Alright, let's make something cool here. This is the part you should tape. Or record, not tape.
Where's Aries?
Tape. Right here.
You're old.
Okay.
Tape stuff.
Alright, so I'm just setting up my scene here a little bit. So let's say this sphere is tracked. Composite glow sticks. Glow stick dash. This is one of the best composite objects.
Try and cross out.
Oh yeah. That's hilarious.
Oh my god!
So they calm down the store and putting glow sticks. Yeah. We don't have to watch the whole thing.
I got it.
Alright, so I'm going to go to Dynamics here, Fluid Effects, Create 3D Container.
Do we have to make the sound effect?
It helps. It really does help.
I can't do that.
Ask Package to show you how to do it. She can't do it. Alright.
I can't do it.
So I'm going to change my size in here. And like I said, you want to keep these about the same so that you've got a nice square cube. Yes. So now that I see that it only moves around a little bit, I can probably make this smaller. And I need to move it down so that it engulfs the entire thing. Alright, cool. Alright, so a lot of you guys have stuff where you're doing stuff with your hands and you're going to have like fire or smoke or something off of them, right? So that's going to be this thing that I've tracked. So let's call this hand tracking. Let me save this while I'm working on it so that if it dies, which it probably will, all is not lost. Alright. Oh, Jason was really happy with all of the footage, by the way. He sent out emails to all the instructors and said, check out the videos that were shot for this class. So really, all the M&A, some of you guys doing your kind of stuff. So you're
Well, that's how it gets leaked out.
Alright, so let's say we want to do some cool, like, magical fire effect on this, right? I'm going to select the sphere, and then select the fluid chamber, and say add edit contents, image for object. So now when I hit play,
Whoa. You have stuff.
you got stuff, which looks bad. See how I can see that like line that appears and disappears in the sphere? It's because this chamber is very low res. I need to res that up. But before I do that, I want to adjust my speed on my fluid and stuff. So I am going to go to dynamic simulation and change my simulation rate scale. I'm going to change that to like 3. And you see how that looks. Swelling up the whole room. Okay, that's good, I think. All right, so now I'm going to go in and I'm going to make this resolution a lot higher. Right now it's 10. I'm going to go to like 30. See what that looks like. That's pretty good. Try 50.
Chunking.
It is chunky, but it's going to look cooler.
Nice.
So you see this works from every perspective too, which is great. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I don't want it to fill up the top of this cube because I'm going to have my character like standing outside or standing somewhere where there's no low ceiling, right? This would be great if you're in a small phone booth doing this effect, right? But you're probably not. You're probably going to put some kind of background behind your person so that they're out somewhere. So what you can do is go to this boundary box and change these to none. So now when it simulates, it just goes right out the top of the chamber. See that? Awesome. All right.
Would you want to extend that if you wanted to go all the way up, or
Huh?
the smoke? Because you know how it just stops right there.
Yeah, well, if you wanted to go all the way up, you'd have to make your chamber larger.
Okay, yeah.
So that, because what happens is it fades out. You can see the fade out here. So that's why you want to make sure that you have a chamber that more than engulfs your sphere. Give it a lot of extra space.
Right.
I'm going to add some velocity swirl to this while I'm thinking about it. Velocity swirl. Like 3. It's looking kind of crappy. It's still really low res. I'm going to crank this even higher.
What's the maximum resolution do you recommend? Or do you not
Anything
have
so that it looks nice but doesn't crash your machine. So as high as you can go without it dying, like that. I need to lock this play every frame and playback speed. I'm going to max playback speed real time. There we go. So at this point, you could like go get a soda or something, you know, while you wait for it to do what it needs to do. So all I'm trying to do right now is get a baseline where I can start. I don't mean baseline like I want to get a decent amount of. I want to get a decent. Yeah.
Wow.
Jokes are free. More jokes. I want this to have a good basis to start with, so that I can then like make fine adjustments. So. What?
Basis.
Basis.
Have a
Yeah.
nice basis.
Basis.
Baselines.
Did you hear about the Australia flooding and stuff that was down in Australia a while back? There was a news story where they said that there were 30,000 pigs that were killed, and they had to correct it. The correct story was 30 sows and pigs, not 30,000 pigs.
Oh.
It's a big difference.
That is.
30,000 pigs.
What are you thinking about? Yeah. All right, so I'm going to save
We do not
this.
talk about whooping.
What I want to do with this now is I want to get this so that it burns off faster, so that I don't have this huge plume. I just want a little bit near the emitter. So I can go to density. I always pick the wrong one first. Dissipation. Let's say 0.5 and see what that looks like.
The CPU's gonna make smoke too.
Yeah. If this starts to smoke for real.
God, it looks so real.
When I was at college, I was going to the mall with my friend Derek Beck, who had a car, and he used to stay up super late for like days at a time. He'd stay up, work on projects, and he had changed the oil in his car, and he forgot to take the funnel out.
Oh!
When we drove to the mall like that, so we're pulling up to the mall, and smoke starts bailing out from under his hood. I was like, dude, your car's smoking. He's like, that's not from my car. I was like, yes, it is. There's smoke bailing out from your hood. So you pull in the parking garage or the parking lot. He opens the hood, and it's just like this big thing of smoke. Luckily, he didn't light, but he had the funnel stuck in there, and oil blew all over the front of it. He just changed it and forgot and just closed it like that.
Oh god.
Yeah,
New.
it looked like that. It looks like that kind of smoke. All right, so I want to change my color here. I'm just going to go in shading. Mess around with the transparency so it's a little less transparent. The other thing you can do is you can mess around with the opacity on this. So you can get parts of it that are more opaque. See that? And if this is too little space to work, you can hit this. It'll bring up a larger version gap.
Oh.
Beautiful. Okay.
Oh my God, you're amazing. Look like you drop buttons. My mind is blown.
What's going on right now?
Alright. So let's get some cool color in here. Density. I can't stop making that noise, I'm sorry. Oh, what color is it? Purple.
Yeah. That looks like that's purple.
Okay, how come I can never finish making the color? Okay, go. Go.
Snap the fingers.
There it goes.
It's cool. Interactive controls.
Yes. So if you mess around with the colors like this, you can kind of get a little more like volume to it, right? Rather than just have one solid color. And then let's add a little bit of flow. Actually, no, we won't put flow on
It looks like gas.
Gas.
Pokemon.
Kind of.
That is
Yeah, it
gas.
does.
it. And what did you say?
It looks like ghastly.
Ghastly.
Pokemon.
Pokemon.
Oh,
It's purple and
Look
it's
it up.
like.
I would play that
it's
game.
just-
Oh goodness.
It's almost
That
exactly.
first
I don't want to
generation.
mention it, but I couldn't.
You know why I don't play Pokemon? Because this video scared the crap out of me.
Oh no.
Oh no. Here we go.
Sort of how it ruined my
Oh,
life.
we're excited.
Oh, blast doors!
Oh my god.
There's no reason to be that excited about getting
AJ like recreating that. Yeah.
Is that your first encounter Pokemon?
$80 for
Yeah.
that last night. Alright, so what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to
Yeah?
hide this
It's like
sphere.
$80.
I'm just going to turn off the visibility of it so it doesn't render.
I should sell my stuff. There you go.
But you can see that it still emits from that geometry. So you want to try to get your geometry kind of close to what you're tracking. Like, I wouldn't go ahead and like take the time to model your real face and put it in. Although you could, but you don't really have to. Like, you can mess around with it so that it looks decent. There's your alpha, right? So you see this is still pretty jagged. So there's a couple things you can do to help get rid of that. We can select this and go into the, actually, you know, let me play this and I'll stop it on a specific frame. We'll compare the same frame a couple times. Let's stop it on like frame 80 or something. $79 is good enough for this. All right. Actually, let me change my render settings too. So here's my production, right? This will also render with Malware. Let's save that. Change this to Malware. So here's the difference between Maya and Malray.
Nothing.
Nothing.
You might think nothing, but The Maya one took 9 seconds, Metal Ray took 6 seconds. So average that out over, you're rendering 300 frames.
33% reduction.
Thank you. Alright. Alright, so that's frame 79.
900 seconds.
Let's go in and add some stuff here. So high detail solve, I'm going to change this to all grids. And substeps, I'm going to put in 3. What substeps are when Maya goes through this frame by frame, right? It looks at frame 1, it looks at frame 2, it looks at frame 3. Substeps are little incremental frames between those frames. So it'll be like 1, 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, all the way up to however you have it set. So by default, this is off. I'm going to put it on substeps and see what that looks like. So we stopped on frame 79, right? Alright, so I'm going to let this go. Now you see it takes a little longer to solve because it's figuring out all the substeps in between.
Just to make the simulation a lot more smooth.
Yes. So it'll look better when you're done. How to Train Your Dragon won the Annie for visual effects, by the way.
Do you agree with that?
What's that?
Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They swept the Annies, I totally agree with it. Toy Story 3 was the sequel of the sequel, which, I mean, it was an okay movie, but you had to pretty much know the other films to get really that much out of it.
It wasn't so much of a visual effects kind of movie.
No, that first sequence was with the explosions. And
Oh yeah, that was true. Oh yeah, definitely.
technically, the whole thing's a visual effect. It's all fake. Now you see, it looks like with this high detail solve, it actually changed my colors a little bit. It looks like I have more of the white than I did in the other one. So you're going to want to test this as you go so that you get the results you want. So you can also see how much longer this is taking to figure out.
It's like,
Almost there.
Why did we go on?
Don't increase.
I gotta pull up.
Negative.
How much is
So that took 4 seconds. So you see how much more detail we have in that? Actually, that was crappy compared to that. I think what we need to do is increase our grid as well. The other thing you can do is blur this effect a little bit in post. You could go with the lower setting. Let me turn off substeps and see how that goes. Crank up my solver quality.
Oh shit.
What are you, crazy?
That's a whole lot of fun.
Does the subdivision on the polygon help
Yes.
affect at all? Because
Yes.
I remember you were reducing your subdivision.
Yeah, you want to go with the smallest thing that still gets the shape you want. There's no reason to do super dense geometry because it emits from the surface, and the more surface area you have, like the more polys you have, the more it's going to emit. And try to calculate.
Is there a way to change the subdivision on all of it after you did a bunch?
Well, maybe. Like you can subdivide it, or if you've got history still on it, you can kind of change it later, but it might freak out. It's closer to what we had. I'm going to change the solver to velocity only. I'm going to put. So it'll do the high detail solve, but only on the velocity. So the speed of it, we'll get that, but like the density and stuff.
Now, what does the solver do?
Solver is the mathematical calculations, like the method of calculations that it uses to solve that. So this uses something called Stokes, sorry, 2 scientists. Depending on your system and what kind of plugins you have, you might get different things in here. Alright, let's do the also. I think that's our best one so far. So that was the first one where we didn't have the high detail solve on. And that's with the high detail solve. So you get a little more detail in here. And a little bit more up here. Kind of depends on what you're going for. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, actually no, I'll leave that for later. Alright, so let's say that you've got your scene and you want to have the fire start at a very specific frame. This is how you do that. Let me turn back on my hand tracking sphere so we can see it. Turning the visibility of this on and off has nothing to do with how it emits in the scene. I just turned that off for the render so that you wouldn't see it there. What does affect it is this fluid emitter 1 that gets added underneath this. So when I selected the fluid chamber and this geometry and I said emit from object, it created this fluid emitter 1. That's what's actually shooting the fluid in the scene now, not that sphere. So if I go down here, like you can see that this translate is yellowed out, it's because it's getting its translation values from this hand tracking sphere right here. So if you want this to change what it's emitting into the scene, it's all in here. So by default, this is all set to 1. We can change this and add different things to it. So let me, I don't want this to turn on maybe until frame 40. So let's say frame 40, I'll key this. And I want it to ramp up to that. So maybe on frame 30, I'll key these at 0. And then I'll let it burn until frame 120. Key that. Or 121, that's fine. And then I'll let it turn off here. Now you can see that my fluid chamber is not doing what it needs to do. It's freaking out because I'm skipping through a lot of frames. Maybe I'll finish it off with like a big burst of fluid. And I'm going to keep going. Oh.
That's going to be on the video.
That's all right.
And see if nobody laughed, it would be fine.
All right, so I've got this turning on and off a couple of times. I want to go into my graph editor and just make sure that this doesn't dip below 0. Like it is right now. I'm just going to flatten these tangents. All right, so let's see what that looks like. Save this. And I'll save this play blast as well. So that the graph doesn't dip below 0. It might freak out because it gets to it's like dividing by 0 and the whole universe collapses. Sometimes Maya will crash if you get values that are below a certain amount.
It's like emitting at a negative rate.
Yeah, it would start sucking things in. Potentially. Actually, it probably wouldn't. It would just crash. Okay, so I'm going to play blast this. Any questions while this is play blasting? Make it go faster if I push this. When I was a kid, I used to think if you grab the speedometer needle and hold it, your car would go faster. But I also tried to swing once by holding 2 ends of a rope and sitting on it.